Hello.
All right, so the tech is all sorted, hopefully. My name is Ahmed Bhinder. I am Policy Innovation Director at the Digital Cooperation Organization. And we are gathered here to discuss the very critical topic of protecting children online or in the digital spaces. Uh, I see some problems with people not being able to hear me. It's on, my audio is on channel 3. May I confirm if people can hear me? Okay, excellent. So I will. So we are here to discuss a very critical topic that is very relevant to the digital economy and the evolving digital landscape. And for us, we have today we have a very senior, diverse, and expert panel of speakers. Unfortunately, our moderator is on his way. He's stuck somewhere, but I will try to fill in for him. His name is Philip Nahas, and he's a partner at a technology policy firm. So we have with us today Mr. Haitham Al-Johari. He is a partner of cybersecurity at PwC. May I ask Mr. Johari to introduce himself, and then we move on with the other panelists?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Haitham Al-Johari. I'm a partner in PwC Middle East, based out of Dubai. I do cybersecurity for a living. I've been with the firm for 20 years. I help government entities. My focus on government entities, critical national infrastructure, working on their cyber agenda, and we're glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johari. Now we have, next we have with us Mr. Muhammad Isap. And he's a founder and CEO of IN4 Group that is headquartered in the media city in Salford. So Muhammad, if you could please introduce yourself.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Sorry. That's better. Good afternoon. I'm Mo Isap. I'm the CEO for IN4 Group. We're one of the leading advanced tech training providers in the UK, working extensively across data, cyber, cloud, and software. As part of our business group, we also deliver the government's Cyber First program, developed by GCHQ into schools and colleges. And I am also a founder of Star Academies, where we have 35 schools and 25,000 young people in education across the United Kingdom as well.
Thank you, Muhammad. Next we have with us is Mr. Shivanath Thukral, and he's Director and Head of Public Policy of Meta in India. Mr. Shivanath, could you please introduce yourself?
My name is Shivnath. I lead public India. Hear me? Hi. Yeah, better. Yeah, my name is Shivnath. I head public policy in India. I've been in Meta for 7 years in India. I've worked before that, and my responsibility would interaction with all government regulatory agencies and making sure that continues to take the right measures in a country like India, which happens to be one of the largest user base for Meta across the world, across Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp.
Thank you, Mr. Shivanath. And we have an online speaker with us all the way from the US. Her name is Afroz Johnson, and working in the UNICEF. So Afroz, can you hear us, and could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Good morning from a very cold New York City. I'm sorry I'm not there, but glad to be joining online. So I'm Afroz Kaviani Johnson. I work at UNICEF, which I'm sure most of you are aware, is the United Nations Specialized Agency for Children. I'm our global lead in our work to prevent and respond to online child abuse and exploitation. UNICEF works in over 190 countries and territories, and I support our teams around the world on tackling this issue. So this includes research, work on legislative and policy reform, training for frontline law enforcement and social services, educative efforts with children and their families, and various collaborations and engagement with industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Fru, so much. Okay, so let me start by saying a few words. I will not take much of your time, and then we would really go ahead and listen from all the experts panelists from here. So as I said, my name is Ahmed Binder. I am Policy Innovation Director at the Digital Cooperation Organization. You can see on your screens we are an intergovernmental organization that covers the digital economy, and we instill cooperation amongst our 16 member states that span from the Middle East, Africa, subcontinent, to Europe, and we do a lot of initiatives around, for example, around the sustainable growth of digital economy, governance in the digital space, AI, digital rights, etc. We have a growing list of observers. And the observers are from the academia, from civil society, from private companies as well. So as you could see on the screen, we are 40 plus, and we are rapidly growing. We play 4 roles for, as I said, we are an intergovernmental organization. So we are represented by the ministers of digital economy and ICT of our member states, and we play 4 roles for our member states. We advise them on the best practice policies. We facilitate the cooperation on digital economy. We advocate for the best practice policies, and we provide information. So we have published a few indices to measure the digital economy. But the details could be found on the website. So today I am here to talk about the safe space for children. Children are digital natives, and actually I was having a chat with my kids who are 13 and 10 last night, and I was talking to them. I was telling that I'm going to speak at a session for online safety for children. So could you come up could you tell me what are the issues that you face online? And they said, what do you mean? What do you mean online, or what do you mean issues that we face? And it took me a while to bring it to them, or to discuss with them that there is world around the digital world for them. So for them, it's all about digital, and that is why when we think about them being digital natives, they live in the digital world. The first question when we are addressing the issues around the children's online protection is how do we define a child? Who qualifies to be a child? Generally, a child becomes an adult when the child turns 18, but there's no magic switch that flips and you qualify from being a child to an adult. So when we are thinking of online safety, and we are thinking of creating the safe digital experiences, we need to remember that the child's needs, they change as they grow, and as they grow does not really only include as they grow from, for example, from toddler to a preteen, etc., but as the digital experiences evolve as well. And therefore the discussion is ongoing, and the discussion has to evolve, and the measures to protect child online safety, they have to evolve, keeping this into consideration. The second thing is then how do we define a safe digital space? So the term refers to an online environment where individuals, especially children and vulnerable groups, can interact, communicate, and engage in various digital activities without having the risk, without experience the risk of harm, exploitation, or abuse. 5 years ago, approximately, there was a study that I was just looking up for, and almost a third of digital interactions or a third of internet users were children, and this was 5 years ago. I'm not sure. I did not come across. Maybe the panelists have a latest number, but I'm sure it's half of the population or half of the internet users are. So, keeping this into consideration, last year we did some work on digital rights, and one of the streams of our work focused on online safe space, especially for children. We developed through consultation, and I would come back to it. How did we do it? But we developed a paper that is available on the DCO website. I welcome you all to have a look at that paper. And in that paper, we explored different dimensions of what are the threats and challenges, as you could see on your screen, that the children are subjected to, and what are the different categories, who are the stakeholders who can play a part in protecting the safe space for children, and then we furnish some policy recommendations based on that. So OECD categorizes the risks into 3 categories: the risks that are associated with technology, the ones that are associated related to the customer experiences, and the risks related to privacy and security. We all know, and I think we will get, so we have social media representation here. So we'll explore what is being done to counter the effects of addictive behaviors of social media, especially with the endless scrolling feature. Then we have the immersive technologies, for example, metaverse, and a lot of virtual technologies that are coming. So what could be the impact, for example, if the amount of data that is being collected or that could be collected on a child or anybody who is using those technologies, and how it could be used and how it could be protected. We will explore how that risk can be effectively addressed. And then we, cyber bullying and social media, etc., bullying, etc. They're all the risks that the children face in today's world. And hopefully, with this, with our discussion, we will address some of those, and we'll see what is being done to address them. So then, normally, and you could see on this slide, this is it could be educational institutes, or it could be any organizations that are dealing with the children's data, or with who are dealing with the children. So the data leaks, for example, from the education system is a growing concern, which can then, if it lands in the wrong hands, could be used for harmful manipulation of kids, for example, or the ineffective crisis management by the institutions or by the organization can lead to reputational damages. Lack of efficient incident management could cause disruption from the education system for the kids that is highly dependent on the online interfaces now. So the paper then comes to present some policy recommendations for 4 kind of stakeholders. So, for example, schools and educators should support the programs and helplines for children to create awareness campaigns on cyberbullying, especially. The role of parents is, is moving beyond just implementing the parental control, and it's about parents' involvement. And I'll give you a small example towards end of my my conversation here on that. But it's not just that you yell at them and say your screen time is over, and then disconnect yourself. That's not working anymore. Government, for example, so there's a concern about the targeted ads, about the endless scrolling, about the transparency of what the kids say. So governments have a lot to do there. And private sector, the most important thing is, and this is for all, is to involve children or involve the young people into whatever is being designed at them. Okay. Now, the boring stuff aside, so last night I went home. As I said, that I just got my 10 years old, and I said, look, I'm preparing something for tomorrow. So could you give me a few points that I can bring up? So she went back and she wrote this piece of paper for me. And I think this is the, it was not meant to be shown. She just wrote this piece of paper for me. And this was for me to copy the points here. And I just looked at it. I just, pulled it out from our notebook. And I think to conclude my my intervention here, I would just read what she said. Just read in whatever grammatic mistakes or whatever you find it. So, number one, she says games. So she categorized her online interaction after we had this conversation that, how do you look at the online space? So games, she says problem is cyberbullying. Now a 10 years old is aware of cyberbullying before looking it up, and I had no idea about it. And she says the solution is to report the person, then talk to an adult who you feel comfortable with. So this is her recommendation, right? Then she writes apps. Calling apps is a subcategory that she produced. And the problem, she says, is random people calling or texting you. She does not have a cell phone. So I was quite surprised to see this, that the ways of interaction that is subject to, of course, she has a tab, she interacts with Soul. So this is a problem that she identified, and the solution is ignore and block. So we need the kids. They are smart, but we really need to reinforce this. Then she says, watching apps. Of course, this is the content that is available online, and the problem is inappropriate content. So we try to protect them from any inappropriate content, but they are very well aware. And the solution, she says, is report the channel and dislike the video. And then she says, if you are a minor, turn kids mode on. By the way, I'm okay. So then comes the final thing is social media. And the problem, she said, is addiction. And the solution is put a screen time limit, which I normally do, and go outside regularly. So the importance of the physical activities is really important. The final one is, again, on the social media, she says hacking. Make the system stronger so the hackers cannot break into people's accounts. So I would really finish my my speech with this, because last night at around 12:30, when she gave me this paper, she has school holidays, so she's allowed to keep awake until late. I said, okay, I'm done. I just put this paper, I said, I'll just read it out in front of the panel today. So with this, thank you very much. I pass it on to our able moderator, Mr. Philip Nahas now. We went through the moderation sessions, and the floor is all yours now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. And testing. Okay, now. It's Ahmed, and special thanks to Little Miss Binder for insights straight. Good. Again, everyone, my apologies for joining this session late today. And I'll start by saying that I got from my child's nursery, which is that we overprotect children in the world and we often underprotect them in the virtual world. And today we're here to discuss to understand how can we provide the right protection to children across the virtual world. And for that, I have a very distinguished panel joining me today. I'm going to take back my seat because I feel I'm disconnecting here. Excuse me while I do this sitting down. And again, let's see. Hello, testing. Very well. Excuse me, to opening my laptop and my notes for today. moment to introduce everyone. So maybe with starting Don, excellent, excellent. So maybe we can take some time to go over a few questions. The last Ms. Binder gave was secure your system to that in. And I think this is, Haitham, this is your area of predilection. So my question to you is, maybe if I put it in my, what are the do's and don'ts for institutions when it comes to cybersecurity and environments?
Thank you. Let me start by saying,
Yeah.
mine is not working? Okay. So let me start by saying it's very personal to everyone who has like children, because like it impacts every society on the planet, and when it becomes personal, we have to put the right measure. It becomes even moral obligation for all of us to stand and to protect the most vulnerable part of our society, which is children. Now, to do that, there is an obligation on multiple stakeholders, the way we look at this in PwC. So there's a role for international communities, and we have seen, for example, Saudi taking a big step last year in arranging what we call child protection conference or summit, which took place in Riyadh, where they looked into international collaboration to look into this international challenge. Now, if we go down the role of government, I'm not going to talk about that, then also schools, parents, etc. Now, if we zoom into the private sector, where I belong, so we categorize the private sector into 3 categories, the way we look into that framework. So the first category is social media, gaming platform, and those platforms, or like mobile operator or technology manufacturers who interact directly with children. This is the first, let's say, layer of technology or private sector that interact with children. And there is a big role that these players should play in terms of many factors. Let's say different risks, cyberbullying. So how do you minimize that? By having the right functions from social media platforms, and we'll talk about that from Meta. We'll hear about that from Meta. So how do you control comments? How do you control the ability to block certain user? Not all platforms, they have this. So this is a journey that all platforms should adopt that kind of behavior. It's like we take it by default by leading players like Meta or Instagram and stuff like that, but others should also follow. There's inappropriate content, for example. Inappropriate content, then here comes the role of AI, where not just AI, but even human moderation is needed to control that and to filter content for children. Similarly, when we talk about privacy is very important, that we have the right privacy configuration for that these platforms adopt in order to make sure that they have this by default. It's no longer like a feature. It should come by default in these platforms. Two-factor authentication for users, for children even. It should become easier and easier. It should become, again, a default setup. That kind of obligation on those players is very important. Activating features like parental control, screen time, like what your daughter suggested. And also we recommend that parents and children, they use the same platforms, because that makes it easier for parents to control what their children watch, or limit screen time, or ability to download apps and stuff like that. Then the second category of private sector would be companies, service providers, technology vendors. These guys, they work in the back, let's say, to serve the entities that they deal with children directly. These companies, they need to invest more in R&D. They need to work with law enforcement. They need to work with regulators to help them drafting these kind of policies. This is the kind of consulting work that companies like PwC do. Vendors, they have like big obligation to invest more in ethical AI and stuff like that. And finally, we look into corporates or organizations in the private sector. They also have a role to play, adopting compliance and privacy laws, protecting young generations. And let's not, one of the challenges we talk about, it's an interesting one, is the new generation is very let's say they have this mentality of hacking and not adhering to like corporate kind of policies. That new generation is like this. How do you deal with that kind of behavior? How do you make sure you give them the best experience, but at the same time it's safe and it does not compromise the corporate policies as well?
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. You spoke about corporate policies, and I think that's a very important point to touch on. And maybe I'll turn it to Mo to give us his view about whether these corporate policies should be more about adults setting the path to safety for children, or are these also about empowering children themselves to self-govern their safety? What's your view on that, Mo?
Can you hear me okay? I think the technology is struggling at the moment. I can give you a perspective just from my...
No, let's swap.
Is that not working?
We can hear you. Yeah, we can work.
Yeah. Sorry. Swap the mic. So I'll give you a perspective from what we do in the UK. So we have a cyber and esports academy. 7,500 young people transition through those academies across the country. And one of the things that I will say starting point is that we cannot just use a single definition of children and think that that is be all and end all in terms of policy thinking. You've got a spectrum of children, those from disadvantaged backgrounds to those from more affluent backgrounds. There is a very different exposure to risk in those socio-economic contexts. There's also the way young people are, from neurodiversity to learning and learning styles and how they interact into that world. And unless we understand the nuance, no policy can ever work. And it's got to be at that sort of level of hyper-local to hyper-child in the context of how that child is engaging with the wider world, and the digital world is just part of the oxygen that they breathe. So what we've found in our cyber and esports academies is that you've got young people who are feeling empowered and belonged. And I think that one thing that heartens me, that all the surveys that I've seen and I've experienced from those young people that go through my academies, is that they do know right from wrong. In fact, to be honest with you, I think they're probably better than our generation was in terms of understanding right from wrong. It's just the world is more grey than it was black and white in our day. And let's be honest, in our ability to and you've heard already that we have limitations of our knowledge about this world. And any one of us of a certain generation that had sex education at school, I don't think anybody really learned about sex at school. They just experienced it themselves and learned for themselves. And I think this is the same issue. Young people are not listening in the classroom, they're just experiencing it for themselves. The difference is if you give them a place where they can be empowered in a safe place. And what we do with our cyber and esports academies is that we give them the belonging of the positive elements of this world and how they can be empowered, both in terms of understanding their futures, but also understanding that there's a physicality with that digital world, and making friends and connecting with peers is augmented with the digital world, not just exclusively in the digital world. And those two things are critically important. So I think, from an understanding of young people point of view and what we do to empower them to we have cyber teams in each school. And I believe that, we need to get to a point where young people will govern this space themselves if you give them the tools and the ability to do so. And like we have, in every school, in every country, young people will be selected as head boy and head girl and prefects and monitors. I think there's a space now for schools to really identify digital advocates to be able to govern across their peer group and give support to the educators, because the educators are really struggling to keep up with the nuance and the complexities, even primaries. I mean, I've got 16 primary schools in my trust, and if I speak to the educators in the primary schools, they're at a loss because the sophistication of a year 5 or year 6 child is way beyond the capacity of a key stage 2 teacher who really does not understand truly the complexity. So they might deliver a curriculum, but that is nowhere near where it needs to be. And that confidence needs to emanate from both educators and empowerment for young people. So from my point of view, what we've found successful across our cyber and esports academies, we deliver Cyber First for GCHQ, is when we create a safe space for them to be empowered, I think you get some really brilliant outcomes. But I just say that the more deprived, the more disadvantaged the young person, the more vulnerable they are. So that's the point at which we have to do more, because a parent can have all of the sort of tools if they're educated, if they're from a decent socioeconomic background. But I think one thing I would say as a parent, and my children have grown up now, but I would just say that parents need to empathize more. I don't think that there is this preaching mentality that's going to ever work. I think there's a confidence and a openness to understanding, and also for parents to want to learn rather than try and educate all the time as well.
Thank you very much, Mo. And I think you've touched on a good point. It's how do we provide a safe space for children to experiment, and how do we give them the tools to do so? Across the board, I feel that the first online space that children tend to experiment with is social media today. And maybe that's the perfect segue for a question to Shivnath here. And it's, in terms of that space, in terms of, the environment, what's Meta's approach to ensure the safety and the well-being of children online, especially with respect to the products that you provide? I'm going to share my mic with you.
Thanks so much. And firstly, I wanted to thank all my panelists and you for framing this issue in a very forward-looking manner. I can assure this room that usually when I'm in panels, it starts with a very attack mode. What I'm glad to hear is that at least you all are thinking of solutions and how to make it better rather than looking at blaming anyone. And everybody talked about their parental experience. I have a 10-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter. And trust me, I think despite me working for Meta, they know much more than I do when it comes to the world of technology. Sometimes I have to look at them to get some tricks caught. And yet, what they don't realize is there is something called the cloud. So when they're sitting back in India and working on their iPad, I can see them clicking pictures on the iPad on the photo booth and uploading, thinking that I'll not get to see. It's just that the iCloud account is linked to my phone and I see these photo booth pictures appearing on my phone. Having said that, that brings me to the moot point. What as companies are we doing, or what is our approach? I can confidently state that as a company which is one of the leading companies in the world of social communication, the approach we have taken is very pragmatic, forward-looking, and builds solutions, some of which we've heard already and some of which are already existing through the product. You cannot bring in a sheet of paper and tell people to say these are the features that can happen. These features are already there, whether it's about non-stop addiction, nudging on alternate content, sleep time, parental controls. Which brings me to a more fundamental issue. You can do parental controls. The question we have to ask is, do our children want us to be allowed to implement those parental controls? Will they like it if you tell them, give me the phone, let me put it on, and now I have some control? They don't even want to share their account. That's the reality. You can have parental controls, but kids don't like to share their account details, right? So then what do you do? So I think the more fundamental approach is think it through the design level. So someone rightly said, we've launched something called teen accounts, where the default feature of a teenager will be on a parental control side. It is not like they have to give it. So the default feature, if you are below 16, will be on a parental control. So I think as a tech company, if I don't use the tech to install these solutions, we have a problem, and that's why I think we have taken the right measures. But I want to share one thing with this room. This will never be 100% job done. It cannot be. Reason, just like in the real world, bad actors are everywhere. In the virtual world, bad actors are everywhere. But we need to think through what you read from your piece of paper, unwanted contact. On Instagram, for example, we do not allow anybody who you don't know to contact you, to message you or whatever. And yet, we see instances of cyberbullying or unwanted contact happening through different forums because the bad actors are on the prowl. So the question is, as parents, how vigilant are we? Like Mo said, the tools or the thinking of yesterday cannot confront with the issues of today. So are we upping our game as parents? I find it as a challenge, despite being in a tech company. Sometimes we are not able to gauge what the bad actors are going to do. Hacking impersonation, it is not just a child or a youth issue. How many people in this room have not been hacked? We are all adults. Please tell me the truth that you've never been hacked. Do you have your two-factor verification on your Instagram or WhatsApp? I'm sure many of you don't. Why? This is despite us being adults. We don't try to go and do it. So you imagine your child should be doing that. So the awareness and the knowledge level, how we are doing. One fundamental approach from the safety of the youth, which we feel we very strongly believe in, is the framework of preventing, controlling, and responding. We take several measures, including deploying a lot of AI tools, looking at keywords to make sure anything bad before it happens, we can prevent it. Once a bad incident has already happened, it's too late. We have lost that game then. So prevention is the most critical thing of taking down accounts which are usually on the prowl, etc. Then is giving user controls, which is related to all the features, etc. that we have. The third one is as critical, which is responding. How fast are we able to give you ability to report to us, and how fast are we responding to it? Are we working with enough civil society organizations? Like we have a program ongoing with NECMEC where we share CSAM data to make sure that law enforcement agencies across the world are able to work with each other. So I think the prevent, control, and respond mechanism is super critical. And the last piece I will say is, on more egregious issues like CSAM, etc., we take it very seriously. We are invested heavily on that. And I think we work across multiple agencies across the world. Inside our company, we have many former law enforcement officials who work with us, officers who work with us, and we deploy a range of technology to make sure that we are able to prevent bad actors from being on the platform. It is not in our interest. I mean, I cannot ask you to be user of my platform if I can't keep our children safe. As a parent, it is my responsibility. And in India, trust me, I show up in front of every regulator to be asked very, very tough questions. But I can also say very proudly that we play on the front foot by stating what we do, running public affair campaigns for awareness, etc. But at the end of the day, my product has to do the talking, and that's what we are focused on.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think you've made a very good point on, the engagement with the regulators, and you're constantly on that. Would you care to elaborate a bit more about?
We have Afroz online from UNICEF.
We do, I
yes,
suppose.
We do. So should we invite her?
Yeah, I think she would be absolutely next. At this point, I think if we're talking about policy stakeholders, I think it's a good idea to talk to Afroz, and I think to hear from you as well, Ahmed, from the the NGO's perspective, from the policymakers' perspective. And to begin with, if Afroz is with us, and she can hear us, right? Okay, very good. So maybe Afroz, the question to you here, which is, what are the most critical interventions that governments in various countries can make to protect the children online? And this is from your experience as UNICEF. What can you tell us?
Yeah, thank you so much. And sorry I didn't meet you at the outset, Philippe, but it's great to be part of this conversation. So I think I would just highlight four key challenges and then, the responses that we're advocating for and supporting government with around the world. So, a lot of them have already been touched on, so forgive me for repetition. But the first, I think, when we look at this issue, is the design and the operation of digital services and platforms. We've heard, how there are bad actors on these platforms, but also, there are design features that make more risks for children and not just children, as we've heard. So we see that there are, user engagement prioritized over child safeguarding, for example. The ways in which platforms are designed, facilitate kind of this rapid and wide-ranging spread of hateful and abusive content, as another example. So the ask there for government and for regulators is, requiring the tech sector to undertake assessments, and I think this came out in the DCO report as well. And what UNICEF advocates for is for child rights due diligence and particularly child rights impact assessments, so that companies can, rather than being reactive and trying to retrofit after the fact, can be more proactive and embed this concept of child rights by design, which is inclusive of safety by design and privacy by design. So all of these are, prioritized in the development of digital products and services. So this is the first ask for governments and policymakers, is really prioritizing children's rights in, the design and governance of technology products, and this could be through regulation or other means. The second main challenge is, of course, that we know that laws have not kept pace with the rapid development of digital technologies. And then when we're talking about criminal activity, there are also challenges in investigating and prosecuting cross-border cases. So the ask then again for government and what we've done, around the world, is really support a government to update laws and policies so that online violence is adequately criminalized, and that they're also future-proofed against rapidly evolving technologies. Um, the third challenge that we see around the world is that social services and law enforcement often lack the resources and the expertise to address these new challenges through digital technologies. So this makes it hard to support, at-risk children, and also it makes it hard to identify perpetrators. And I really appreciated the intervention earlier, just talking about particular groups of children that are at risk, and the solutions for supporting them, need to happen kind of in real life, if I can put it like that. So we need strong social services in order to identify and support children. Um, in many countries, mental health services are often insufficient. So this can leave children without support, which again, it makes them vulnerable, but it also means that they don't get adequate support after, if and when something, happens online. So I think the ask there for government is really equipping law enforcement, educators, social services, and others to really identify, respond to, and prevent forms of online harm. And then finally, I would say there are challenges with respect to some harmful kind of social norms and limited public discussion that we have in many communities around the world. There are taboos around talking about certain topics like sexual abuse, and these things can make it difficult for victims, to speak out. And we know that there are forms of sexual abuse that are facilitated by technologies. And when we have these, limited public discussion and we have these harmful norms, it can really constrain kind of the efforts to prevent and respond. So as well as, the efforts that we've spoken about for governments, supporting children's digital literacy and online safety, we also need those broader educative initiatives that are designed to foster healthy relationships in early adolescence, those that are designed to challenge kind of harmful gender norms, to motivate help seeking, and really support children, if their peers disclose to them, how can they react to that? And of course, all these other educational initiatives with parents and caregivers and educators. So I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Afroz. I think it's very interesting that you spoke about your collaboration with the various governments, and maybe we can hear it from another perspective. The DCO is all about collaboration between various governments, specifically the digital arms of these governments. Maybe you can tell us, in your experience, Ahmad, how does that collaboration contribute to the safety of children online?
Thank you, Philip. I think I will start with this. So there's one topic across the policy domain, so we are public policy practitioners, where there is a consensus that things need to be done. So children need to be protected. So we have come to a level of consensus where a lot of other policy debates are towards taking an approach or another. There is a global consensus that something needs to be done to protect the children, and especially while they are vulnerable online. Now, then the question is, how do we activate the different stakeholders? So the role of the intergovernmental organization like UNICEF is broadly policy guidance or proposing initiatives or proposing different measures. The role of the technology companies is to use technology to enhance or advance that agenda. So the companies, the organizations are actually involved in these discussions and this dialogue. So I'll give you an example. Last year, and this is where this session and this policy paper came from. We have a program called Digital Space Accelerators Program, where we pick up the pressing issues in the digital economy. And then we have global roundtables and discussions across all the regions, and we bring in experts to really talk about and discuss the issues and how to collaboratively solve those issues. So this is one role of the intergovernmental organizations, but I think there's a need for a more concerted effort on the national levels as well. So right now, of course, the policy landscape and the legal landscape and the regulatory landscape are different across different countries, and the level of maturity is quite different across different countries. So one of the recommendations that or one of the things that we picked up from last year's collaborative discussion was that on a national level, considering or identifying the different stakeholders that could include educators. Of course, there are common stakeholders like government policymakers and like technology companies that are beyond borders. But to get them together, come up with children online protection strategy. So that would include what are the rules that need to be made, what are the rules that need to be tweaked, what are the initiatives. So it has to be a concerted effort on national levels, while learning from the best practices. Of course, we have a whole bunch of them, and then having a national championship across those nations, and then those that could then be expanded on a regional or a international level.
Thank you very, very much. I think we're all out of questions for today. I'll open it up to the audience. If there are a few questions that you have for any of our panelists today, please raise your hand and we'll give you the microphone. We've got time literally for a couple of questions, so I think I'll start with the lady and then pass it on to you.
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Jutta Kroll from the German Digital Opportunities Foundation. I'm a children's rights advocate. And first, let me congratulate that you have today a panel with only male speakers, because several years ago we would have been talking about safety for children only among women. So it's kind of an achievement that no woman is on your stage. I would like to refer you to the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, because you have somehow picked upon that issue. I saw the esports, Mo speaking about the esports, and that is related to the children's rights to leisure time, to play, in Article 31. But also I thought that some of the measures you've been talking about would touch upon children's privacy, and that is Article 16 of the UN Convention. So when we put up parental controls, when you have a look at the photos your children upload to the cloud without them knowing, that would touch upon their privacy. So we need to take care that we balance privacy of children as well as their right to be protected. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm actually currently a high school student in Massachusetts. So as a literal child perspective, I want to elaborate a little bit on what you said about how children indeed know the difference between right and wrong. I completely agree with that after being exposed to all kinds of education about digital safety and stuff. But one thing I observed in my school is that despite the fact that we all have been educated about digital safety, we still become vulnerable to it, and some people even go on to become the attacker. So I think the reason for that is that children are evolving and technologies are evolving, but the education on digital safety has to keep pace with those evolution. So I think it's also time for us to revolutionize our education for our children.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing. Maybe I'll conclude in a minute, just to say that we've seen in short that the digital world is actually an image of the real world, whereby we determine there are bad actors in both, and we need protection in both. Certainly, the policies out there were not up to speed. We have been playing catch up for the past few years, and we are still catching up with a very fast paced evolution of the digital realm. One thing that I think becomes apparent from our panelists here is the importance of looking at it holistically, from international organizations to governments to parents to law enforcement, as well as policymakers, all the way to empowering children themselves. And I think, as you well said, the difference between right and wrong is something that should be infused at a very early age, and it should be holistically part of what we do as we conceive new policies to go ahead. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. I appreciate your time and hope to see you again soon.